Hey everyone, so today we're going to make a simple lined drawstring bag. In order to do that, we're going to need 2 pieces of fabric, and then we'll have 2 pieces each. You decide how big you want your bag to be. So let me move this piece out the way for a minute. You can decide if you want that bag to be a big bag. Do you want it to be a small bag? What are you placing in it? That's going to determine what your dimensions are. The dimensions that I am using for this bag are about 13 inches by 19. So this is 13 by 19. So that's a dimension that I decided to use for this. All 4 pieces, 2 each for each one, are cut out to the same size. In addition to that, I've also cut a piece of that I'm going to use for the drawstring. And this is longer than the width of my bag. And so this one is about 23, this is about 46 inches. But again, you want it longer than the width of your bag and enough just to, like when the bag is fully open, that these are not going to get swallowed back up into the seams of the bag. So they can be as long or as short as you want them to be. And this is by 2 inches. What I will end up doing is taking this, when I take it to my iron, I'm going to press this in half, and then I'm going to press the ends, the raw edges, into the center, and then I'm going to press it so that it looks like this. So there are no raw edges. And this will be the drawstring. Once I do that, we'll thread it through and we will have a bag. You will decide for your bag what kind of bottom you want. If you want to use a rounded edge, you can scoop these around and you can make them a rounded bag, or you can have just a flat bag. It doesn't matter. And so using something like a cup or a plate, you would just place it here, trace around, and cut this little edge off. And that's what's going to give you a rounded edge. For me, I'm going to do a box. So I want my corners to, I want the bag to sit flat. That's how I've decided that I want this drawstring bag to sit. So what I'm going to do is take out a square end. I will come here to this end and decide how much of a square I want out, as long as it's a square. So 2 by 2, 3 by 3, 4 by 4. The more I come in, the less room I'm going to have at the bottom of that bag, because I'm going to take off equal sides on this side as I am on this side. So it's going to leave me about this much room, because the box is going to be like, these are going to come up around this way. So if that works for you, then the bigger the box, the better it is. If you don't want all of that and you just want something just a little pronounced, then you can do a smaller box corner. So you could do 3, you could do 4, you could do 2. I'm going to live with 2. I'm going to take my rotary cutter and cut 2 inches off this way. And I'm going to cut 2 inches off this way. The great thing about my rotary cutter is it doesn't have to be 100% perfect, because that's what scissors are for. I just don't feel like using the scissors, and I don't feel like marking it. I'm not really going past the ruler's edge so that I don't cut into the fabric area and then I have a hole at the bottom. So you can see it's not completely cut, but now I can use that scissor and snip it till it comes off. It's not completely cut here, but I can use my scissor, and I just use it going in both directions and cut it. So I have these little scraps left over. If you need them, 2-inch If you need a 2-inch square for some sort of project or something, oh, that had a hole in it. I hope there are no more holes in this, but I can use it for a patch. Or they can go into your scrap bin for something else. They're gonna go in the scrap bin because I don't foresee doing that. So I have these cut out. We're gonna box these and we're gonna put this bag together. So let's take it to the machine. I am using my Janome 3160 QDC. This is a quilting machine. It's used for quilting, but you can absolutely use it for regular sewing. I will take the first 2 pieces of fabric. Because this is Ankara, I want to make sure that I have right sides to right sides, and right now they are right sides to right sides, and I can look at my fabric and see that that's the case. And I'm going to sew each side. You determine again how wide you want this. I would not go more than maybe a 1/2 inch for this bag. So I'm just going to sew up each of the sides, and these are scraps, so for some reason whoever gave me this fabric had a ton of staples in them, and for some reason I didn't get all those staples out. Okay, that's one side, and let me get the other staple out of here. Okay, so here we go. There we go. And let's take it to the machine and sew. And again, you're making that decision where you want, like, do you want that 1/2 inch? Do you want a whole inch? Where you want it to go is totally up to you in terms of your seam. I would not go more than a 1/2 inch. Or I should say I wouldn't go less than a 1/2. And you'll see why I don't want to go more than a 1/2 inch when I create. I just want to sew up these sides. So different people do this differently when they construct the bag. I do not have a problem using a seam ripper. Back stitch. Okay, this is going to be the outside of my bag, so I am going to stitch this bottom down. And depending on how you make the bag, you could, and we'll talk about that in a minute, you could determine that you want to sew everything close at the bottom and stitch around the top. You could do it around the bottom. It just depends on what your finish is going to look like and how you're going to use, how you want that bag to look like when you finish working with it. Okay, so right sides together. I have sewn these long sides here, this long side here, and this in the center. I now want to get in here, and I'm going to pull open this little boxed area that we cut out and match those seams up. I'm going to open the seams on both sides so that they lay nice and flat against each other. And I'm going to straighten this out so that I have a flat edge. I can use a pin at this point if I like, or I can use my fingers, but I want everything to be nice and flat. Okay, so the seams match up right here. and those ends are nice and straight. So this goes straight across. And I'm going to take it back to my machine, and I'm just going to stitch straight across. I'm going to give it the same seam allowance that I gave it before, just to keep everything uniform for myself. And you should backstitch back and front on the ends, and that just holds everything in place. Okay, and we'll do the same thing on the other side. We're going to open that seam up. We can use finger pressing just to open that seam all the way up so that it's nice and flat. We'll do the same thing with the seam on the side. We'll match those seam centers up so that they're nice and even. Pull out your corners so everything is nice and straight, and take it back to your machine and stitch straight across. Same seam allowance. Okay. Okay. I have a lot of threads that I just need to cut, and then they're not as important to cut them right away. But this gives what you will see is a boxed bottom. So if I turn this inside out, and I poke those corners out, you'll see that little box. Okay. So the bag will sit on the table very nicely. You know, of course it's floppy up top because there's no interfacing in here, but it's gonna sit. So if there are things in it, it will sit nice and soft. And then you can fold it over if you need to tuck it away. So this is one side, we have to do the other side. And again, you're gonna make a decision at this point. If you want to turn the bag from the bottom and sew all the way around the top, you need to make sure that you leave the bottom open so you can pull everything through. If you don't do it that way and you close everything up like you did this, then you're putting one inside the other, and then when you stitch them wrong sides and wrong sides, you have to make sure you turn these edges down on both, and then you're stitching all the way around. So totally up to you which way you want to go. Okay? But what we do know is that we're going to stitch both sides. Now, I'm not necessarily a fan of closing the end up and just doing a drop-in method, which is what they call it. And I'm doing this wrong, so I'm going to stop right now because I'm too busy running my mouth and I didn't pay attention to what I was doing. So what did I do wrong? I can see from the shiny side that I'm sewing right sides together. And that's because I got a notification and I was too busy reading the notification to pay attention to what I was doing. This is the wrong side. So I need to pull these stitches out. And I did not change my stitch length, which I should have. And there are 20 million ways to use a seam ripper. And I choose to use it one of the hardest ways. And all I'm doing right now is kind of just pulling the thread because I can, just to kind of get it out of there. Okay, I think I got that. And we'll take it up this way because, and nobody has no time to sit there and do it the right way. And you'll see that this particular fabric is very forgiving of me doing it that way. Okay, so what we're gonna do is not assume, like we did with the other piece, that they were right sides together. This was not, and we're gonna stitch this together. And we're gonna try this again. And I am back tacking, so back stitch, just so that it doesn't, when I'm doing everything, it doesn't come loose. I don't want to cut my threads too short, and because I didn't do a little bit of a back stitch or a reverse stitch, that it just comes undone, and then, you know, it messes up the process as I'm going. So doing a back stitch helps. Okay. Question is, are you dropping it in or are you using this? If you are, and so let's not drop it in. Let's birth it. If we're gonna birth it, I need to leave enough opening so that when I birth it, I can pull it through. So I'm gonna do 4 back stitches. So the first back stitch is gonna go from here to here. I'm gonna leave this open and then go from here to here, and I'm going to back stitch in and here too. So on the ends, here and here, leave this open, and so I'll show you what that looks like. So I'm going to start at the end, back stitch. You would set pins if you need to. Stop at the point you need to stop, back stitch. I'm going to jump, and so I'm going to just pull the thread and the fabric to the point where I need to go to the next location. I'm going to back stitch, go to the end, back stitch again. Okay. And so you can see here that I went, so here, this is just the thread itself, because I just jumped, I didn't cut it, and then I did here. So let's cut that thread, just so you could see it without the thread looking there confusing you. And we'll cut those pieces off. Okay. So here it is again, and you can see the back stitch, right? So from here to here, back stitch. We jumped, back stitch, here to here, and another back stitch. We'll take that piece of thread off. Okay, so now there is an opening in here to bring everything through. And then we'll stitch that up at the end, either by hand or by machine. And to know me is to know it ain't gonna happen by hand. We're gonna open this up again, like we did with the other one. Push those seams together. I'm opening up the seams. And sometimes I go, because I'm a quilter, I tend to do them to one side. It depends. But because of the drawstring that's going in there, I don't want these seams to go to the same side, because I need it for the drawstring to feed through it the way it's supposed to. Pull my thread out the way because my thread is all in the way. Again, pull those edges out so they're nice and straight. come down to my machine, set it to where I need it to go. I like this thread for this fabric for something else. Okay, but we have more of it. Could use it. Okay. And we're going to go in here. And we're going to open up those seams. Press them just nice and flat. Set it on our machine. Back stitch. Cross. Back stitch it again. Lift up. Cut. Okay. And we're not going to turn this inside out yet, but notice that hole is in there, and that's where we're going to pull through this. So this is then going to sit in here. Oops, didn't want that to sit in there. And we're going to top stitch. We line up those seams. And because everything was the same size, it should line up with no problem. We're going to open that up. You can pin it, you can clip it. We're going to pin it. And we're going to clip it. I just want to make sure everything is nice and lined up. Okay. Everything is nice and straight. I can pin if I need to pin more, or I can leave it as is. My machine will allow me to pull this piece off so that I can rotate it around, or I can just do it from my machine without. I'm just going to leave it on just for the purpose. I don't feel like pulling it off. And I'm going to stitch all the way around. And again, this time you don't have to use as much of that thick stitch as you did before, so I'm just going to go to the edge of my foot. And I'm just going to backtack just in case I need to, but I really don't because I'm going to run this all the way around. And the great thing about these bags, again, these could be any size that you want them to be. So imagine that instead of getting Christmas bags from the store, Hallmark, the dollar store, Walmart, wherever you buy them from, you could just get fabric and wrap your gifts in these fabric bags that can be reusable. People can store their shoes in them, their sneakers, or well, I wouldn't put my sneakers, but maybe my shoes, or some other product that could be stored in this. If you're going away, maybe it's your dirty socks and your dirty underwear, but it could be anything, right? And so it's just the gift that keeps on giving. Gonna ride over that edge. So I have secured all the way around. Nothing is open up top. Right sides are together. I sewed the right sides together. So right side to right side. I'm going to come in from the bottom, and I'm going to pull this through that hole that I had. because it's not a thick fabric and there's not a lot of interfacing or anything like that. Wasn't a lot of pull. That was that simple. This naturally makes a crease at the bottom. So here's that raw edge from the bottom. It naturally will crease for you. And then you can either whip stitch this, or you can start from where it was sewn and just run right across it. So I could start out here and just run across it. And I give it about 1/8 of an inch. Whatever that seam allowance was, I want this to be less than that, because if it's greater than that, it's okay. Something happened with my thread. And so one of the things about sewing in real time is you get real-time drama. When you're sewing in video form, you get video drama. I mean, you know, you get the edits. Okay. So let's see what happened here. Not really sure, but we'll rethread it just so that, oops, everything is done correctly. Oops. And this, I am old school, and so old school is not used to using a automatic threader. So because we're not used to using it, it always is a learning curve. And then when you have nails, it's even more of a learning curve. And when push comes to shove, when it's a learning curve, you go back to the old method. But let me try this one more time. Okay, let me go under there. Okay, I got it this time. It's like you need a pair of tweezers. Okay, let's try this again and see how well this works this time. Okay. Pull that little, oh no. Okay, we're gonna come here. I'm gonna get a, okay. Okay, I don't know what happened, but thank goodness that was an easy solve. Because I tell you, sometimes when you do this, it's like, I may have to do this 20 times to get it to work right. Okay, and we'll cut that off. And I'll show you the stitch in a minute. Okay, and so here is, see how close to that edge I went. It's all either done by hand or you can go this close to the edge. So the seam is somewhere right in here, that raw edge, and this is just capturing enough of it so number one, it doesn't spread, and number two, so that it just cleans that bottom up. Okay, so we've pulled this out. What fun. And then we're going to push this back in. Okay. We're going to push those corners, get everything nice and tight. Okay. And then what I can do is I can press it, or I can just finger press around and then just do a top stitch. Totally up to you. Pressing is always better. But if you feel like you don't have to press, you don't have to press. So I can kind of finger press this with my fingers and give it a great top stitch. My top stitch, again, is going to be close. Not because it's going to show, but just because I don't need it to be too far down. So I just want to top stitch around that edge, and that just kind of secures it. If you feel some kind of way, you absolutely do not have to add a top stitch. And I can just give the fabric a little bit of a tug. That will help it to kind of, you know, pull those seams out the way that I need them to. Finger press it so that they're nice and flat, and then I'm stitching right along that edge. I have some threads hanging out for some reason. I do want to get rid of those. I'm just going to finger press just a little bit, or just tug just a little bit. I'm going to finger press and continue. Okay. Give it a little bit of a tug. And it's not a heavy tug, but just a little bit, just to get those seams to pop out for me. And then I just have to, I'll cut that when I get a little closer. I'm right along that edge. I'm really, really, really getting close to the edge, not going off, but just getting close enough to that edge, because that's the look that I'm going for. Okay. I want to clip these little threads before I get there. That helps me not to have a bunch of nesting of the threads and a whole bunch of tangling up of them amongst each other. Do a little bit of a back stitch, pull this out, and put my threads. And you can see just how close I got to that edge. And it's the same thing on the other side. Okay. So from here, I'm going to determine how much of a ruffle I want. So my ruffle could be here. My ruffle could be up here. So it just depends how much I want. Like the more of a ruffle, the more of this is going to display. If I am putting a bottle of wine in there, I want to make sure that it's going around the neck of the wine, but then I would have measured this tall enough, and then I would have given myself enough of this lip for that. Totally up to you, which way you decide for it to go. So I get an idea of where I want that to be. And then I'm going to do a stitch. So I'm going to do some marking for that. And I'm going to measure. Now I have a marking pen. You could use any type of marker. And then I use my ruler to determine how far down I want to go. And I'm going to mark this with this. So I'm doing 4 inches. Marking with this. I want this to be, you could do a 1/2 inch. I'm going to do 1 inch. And I'm going to mark it again. Okay. I have my 2 lines. 4 and 1 inch. Same thing on this side, starting at the top. Four and then an inch. And these are the two lines that I'm going to stitch on. And if I measure it right, which you can see, they match up. So I'm going to stitch that, and they're going to go all the way around. And then what I'm going to do is seam rip this open. So I'm going to reinforce these when I get here. It's going to make it easier for me to pull this off because I can. It can be done the other way, as you can see. Whoops. I'll show you how that works. If you can free your arm, it's like a game changer when you're working with something that you have to go around in a circle for. Okay. I want that other piece. So I'm going to hold my threads so that I don't get that nested up in there because I don't feel like that. I'm going to start a little bit before the seam. Go right on the seam. I'm going to back up, right back over it, right back over it again. And then I'm going to go right on that line. I'm going to make sure everything is nice and flat as I stitch. If you use the right kind of chalk, it should not come off as you are working with the fabric that quickly. So it should not be a problem, and you shouldn't be saying, where are my lines? The more you take your time with this, the better it's going to get. So I suggest you take it. I should have, if I was paying attention, I would have cut those threads before I got this close around, but that's fine because I can still get there. And when I get back to that same place, I'm going to cross over that space again. I'm going to back up and come up. Okay, instead of clipping the thread, I'm just going to go down to the next line that I need to go all the way around this with. Back set over, same process, and then all the way around. Again, making sure that my fabric is nice and flat, because sometimes it'll want to bunch up on you, and you don't want that. Okay, we're almost there. We didn't this time have that loose end, so I don't have to worry about cutting it because it's already built into that other seam, and I'll clip that at the end. Go back over, back, oops, and clip. Okay, and clip that seam close on the inside. And then you can see, like right here, where it crossed over. And all I'm gonna do is clip that little thread on this side and clip that little thread on this side. I dropped my cutter on the floor. Now what I want to do is right in here. I'm going to just pick out a couple stitches just to open this up because that's where the drawstring is going to go through. So there is a way that some people suggest when they do drawstring bags that you actually do this ahead of time, where you would backstitch and you could do you could do this with the you know, the top of the bag. So you would have stopped a little short, you would have stopped a little short, you could have measured it that way and then lined it up. That's why it's important not to use little teeny tiny little stitches, because then you don't have to find them. Like I'm looking for it right now. And I found it, but I just have to get in there and get it. So I can already see where I broke it, and I'm just going to pick out those little seams just to open up that little pocket. I almost have it. And of course this is going to play little tricks on my eyes because it's black thread and there's black in the fabric. But I can get it, and I'm going to take my time ripping that out because I also don't want to rip those stitches that are going across. I can use my little seam ripper to cut the little extra threads off, and here's the first hole on this side, and we do the same thing on this side. And again, you just have to find yourself that little stitch. You take your time with the seam ripper to get in there, to get that first little stitch, and once you get that stitch, you just use your fingers and you just kind of separate every other stitch from there. And I want to make sure that I am cutting the seam, the stitch in the seam, and not the fabric. So I'm taking my time, popping it, and then when I just use my nail, I can kind of pull it back. Once I pull it back, I can see the rest of that seam to pull it out. And I just take my time and pull it out. And again, you'll see different methods for how to do this online. You pick the one that works best for you. So I prefer this method, but like I said, if somebody else wants to measure, they can measure. If you want to use elastic because using drawstrings doesn't work for you, then knock yourself out. But what this did now is create a casing. So this is where the drawstring is going to go in. And it's going to go in, like you could do one casing, go all the way around, and then just, pull from one end, right? So you could pull it this way, or you could pull it both ways. Totally up to you. Okay. Now, somewhere in here, I have the piece that I cut. Okay. And this needs to be pressed. Because I'm going to be lazy, I'm going to use this ball of fabric because I don't feel like pulling the ironing board up here. So we're going to fold this in half and we're going to press. So it's like making binding almost. But we're just going to make a drawstring. And I'm just going to press. And all I'm doing is making sure that those ends are together, wrong side to wrong side. And the iron really isn't that far. There's really no good reason. The ironing board is really not that far. So there's really no good reason that I'm doing this way, other than the fact that, like I said, just being lazy and not picking it up. And I have this whole bolt of fabric here. Okay. So this is pressed in half. You see the raw edges are all on this side. The hard part now comes. What we're going to do is open this up, and we want to sew this to the center. I'm sorry, we want to press this to the center and then fold it over. So that's going to encase those raw edges and leave us with this. Okay. Because this is going to be a pain to do, I'm going to use some clips. Now I don't need many, because I can either go the whole length if you feel like it, or I can just do it in sections. So I told you I'm lazy, so I will absolutely do it in sections. So I'm just going to pin some of these to hold this in place, and then I will go in sections and then just finish it from there. It's not that long, so it's not that bad to do it this way. Okay, I can finger press it down, and then starting from this end, just give a little press. Move that next clip out the way, give it a little press. Move the clip out the way, give it a little press. Okay, I kept this last clip here just so it doesn't shift and move anything, and I can start the next section. Raw edges to the center, fold over, and clip. Raw edges to the center, fold over, and clip. Raw edges to the center, fold over, and clip. Take this one out, press. Take this one out, press. Okay. You're coming right to the end. And you'll notice that I did not go all the way down, just because I said, let me reposition. Just lay those out. Take this out. Take that out. Put this to the center. Fold in half. Oops. And clip. Fold this to the center. Fold in half. And clip. Okay, there's a little bit of adjustment right there. You'll catch it, you'll press it, and you'll move on. Okay. Right here. And the great thing about finger pressing this and clipping this in advance is that if your iron is anything like my iron, you're burning your fingers. And while my hands are used to it, it's still not a good feeling. Okay. One of the things that we also need to do, if you leave this end raw, it's going to fray. So you do want to make sure that you turn this under. And then when you bring these ends in, there's only like this raw point right here in the corner. It's not raw all on the end. And that will keep that from fraying. And I'll just place a little clip there. And we'll do the same thing. We'll do the same thing with the other side. I don't need this, so I'm going to put this down. So again, here we go. We're going to open this up. And it's raw, it can fray. So I'm opening this all the way up. I'm folding this down about 1/4 of an inch. And all I'm doing is folding it back over the same way it was. So now that end is encased inside as well. Okay, that other end is already clipped. So we can actually start from this end so we don't need to clip it. Take this back to my machine. I do want to do right along this edge. And this is the edge that's the open edge, not the folded edge. Folded edge is already taken care of, right? And we're going to do it anyway just to make it even, but you start with the edge that's open. I'm going to backtrack, and then I'm going to stitch. And this is right along that edge. So I'm not going like a 1/2 inch in or something like that. I want it right along that edge. I'm using my finger as a guide. My other hand is holding the fabric to keep it straight. So I can get right along that edge. Now we could be playing bobbin chicken. Come down that other end, back stitch. Let's look at the bobbin. Okay, yeah, we got enough. Okay. And then I'm going to, since I have enough bobbin, I'm just going to turn this around and go back in the other direction, doing the other edge. Same thing. Now ask me if I have a safety pin down here. And the gods have aligned with me today. God has aligned with me. I won't say the gods. And there's a safety pin. Okay. So this is done. It's done on both sides. That is really hard to see. And you can see this stretch right there. Okay. We're going to take a safety pin and we're going to stick it in one end. And then we're going to go back to this casing and go in one of these ends. And I'm just going to thread this through. Now this had to have, the casing had to be wide enough for the string to go through. With a measurement of 2 folded in half is an inch. Folded in half, again, is a 1/2 inch. So I needed at least a 1/2 inch, right? Anything bigger than a 1/2 inch would have worked, so I could have used 3/4 of an inch. I used an inch just to give myself some extra space, but you could have used anything greater than a 1/2 inch. If you would have used, so this is through here right now, and then I'm going to go back in and do the other side. Anything anything less than a 1/2 inch, and this would be a tight fit. A 1/4 inch would have been a 1/4 inch on either side, and you would have been pushing to get that in there. It would go, but it would be tight. Okay. Now, I just did it this way because I refused to have 2 strings. You absolutely could have 2 strings to do it this way. Okay, we're going to pull it through. Okay, we didn't cut that little end of thread off. This little piece right here. Okay. Okay. So you can pull, right? And again, up to you what that looks like. But here we go. And this is the finished bag. I think it's absolutely adorable. Look how those 2 threads play off of each other. But you can absolutely tie this end together in a knot if it wants to go for me. Here we go. And whatever you have in your little pouch is in your little pouch. But this is absolutely adorable. It is, without all the talking, a quick sew. And this is the cutest little bag ever. And I will post a picture in Instagram where you can actually see it a little bit better. Just, you know, be nice to pop those little corners out. There we go. And here's my bag. So of course I can do other little tutorials. Let me know in the comments below what you would like to see next.